Iran says it launched 9 Khorramshahr 4 ballistic missiles at central Israel in the early hours of March 19th. But the number that matters is not 9, it's 24. Because each one of those missiles carries a warhead that can split into 24 separate bomblets, scattering destruction across nearly 5 miles of terrain, homes, roads, military sites. Anything underneath becomes part of the strike zone. The IRGC called this Wave 64 of Operation True Promise 4 and claimed it was the largest coordinated strike package of the war so far. According to Iran, 80 military and military support targets were hit across Israel, from Eilat in the south to Haifa in the north, all in one concentrated window, not over days, not in stages, all at once. And that raises a very uncomfortable question, because Israel says it has already destroyed over 70% of Iran's ballistic missile launchers. So either that estimate is badly wrong, or Iran has been holding back a serious reserve force, or this attack was only one part of a much larger regional operation. Because while these missiles were flying toward Israel, Hezbollah was launching synchronized fire into the north. The IRGC says it hit the U.S. Fifth Fleet in Bahrain, and Gulf energy infrastructure was set ablaze across Qatar, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia. That is not a single-front war. That is coordinated escalation. In this video, we're going to break down what Iran just did, why Israel's missile defenses are under growing pressure, and what this tells us about where the war could be heading next. Let's start with the strike structure itself. The IRGC labeled these attacks as Waves 63 and 64 of Operation True Promise 4. Wave 63 carried the codename Ya Sahib al-Zaman, a dedication to Intelligence Minister Ismail Khatib, who Iran says was killed in an earlier U.S.-Israeli strike. Then came a statement from the IRGC's Public Affairs Office saying Iranian forces had set fire to oil facilities considered American interests in the region. That wording is very deliberate. Not Israeli assets, American interests. Iran is sending a direct message to Washington. Infrastructure connected to U.S. stakeholders is now part of the battlefield. Then came Wave 64. This wave reportedly targeted Ben Gurion Airport, Haifa, Rishon LeZion, and critically, tanker aircraft. That last one may be the most important target of all, because tanker aircraft are what make deep Israeli air operations possible. They are the support system that lets F-35I jets reach distant targets inside Iranian territory. Damage the tankers, and Israel's long-range strike options become much more limited. The IRGC also claimed it hit the U.S. Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain using medium-range missiles fueled by both liquid and solid fuel systems, and Bahrain has reportedly faced nearly 300 intercepted missiles and drones since the war began. That level of sustained pressure would stretch the defenses of almost any country in the region. Now to the part of the story that changes the tactical picture, the Khorramshahr 4 missile itself. A lot of people hear the phrase multiple warheads and imagine a missile splitting into a few pieces near impact. That is far too simple. The Khorramshahr 4 can release up to 24 separate bomblets from a single warhead. Each one carries roughly 11 pounds of explosive, and instead of landing in one tight cluster, they can scatter across miles of territory. That means one incoming missile can create a wide area impact pattern that is much harder to predict, much harder to intercept, and much harder to defend against. According to CNN field analysis, 2 separate Khorramshahr strike patterns spread across roughly 7 and 8 miles. So when we talk about a missile like this, we're not talking about a single clean point of impact. We're talking about a weapon designed to overwhelm space. The missile itself is around 13 meters long, weighs about 20 tons at launch, and uses hypergolic liquid fuel that can remain stored for years. That matters because it cuts launch preparation time to about 12 minutes. Fast launch prep means less warning. Less warning means less reaction time. In flight, the missile can reportedly reach Mach 16 outside the atmosphere and Mach 8 on re-entry. Then during the terminal phase, the warhead separates. So by the time defenses try to intercept it, they may be chasing a detached object moving at tremendous speed, rather than the original missile body. It also uses a mid-course guidance system that allows trajectory correction outside the atmosphere, a phase where traditional ground-based electronic interference is largely useless. According to the CSIS Missile Threat Program, the Khorramshahr line traces back to North Korea's Hwasong-10, which itself evolved from the Soviet R-27 SLBM. So this is not just another ballistic missile headline. This is a system built from decades of missile development aimed at one thing, getting through defenses. And that is why this strike matters. Not because Iran launched 9 missiles, but because 9 missiles of this type can produce dozens of high-speed descending bomblets, spread destruction over a huge area, and force defenders into a losing geometry. That is how a limited number of launches can create the appearance and the effect of something much larger. So now the key question is not whether the war is intensifying. It is. The question is whether Israel can keep absorbing this level of pressure, and whether Iran has already shown its full hand. This is a weapon with decades of engineering behind it. Here's the structural problem for Israel's defenses. Arrow intercepts ballistic missiles at high altitude. It works, but even a successful Arrow intercept can fail to stop the bomblets. Why? Because those submunitions release before the missile body is destroyed, or the intercept angle is not head-on. Once the bomblets are free, they are small, fast, and falling from the stratosphere. Israeli experts say the only reliable answer is to intercept the parent missile as high as possible, mainly with A3, before the submunitions separate. Once the bomblets release, the problem becomes far harder and, in practice, may be almost impossible to intercept. Talonbar, missile expert consulting for Israeli defense firms, put it bluntly. Cluster munitions are a mechanism to bypass active missile defense. He also noted Iran may be leaning more into cluster warheads because their overall missile inventory has been degraded by US and Israeli strikes. Fewer launchers means each missile must inflict maximum damage. The cluster warhead is the solution. An Israeli military official acknowledged on record that the country's air defenses are world-class, then immediately admitted the defense is not airtight. That matters. When a serving official says the shield has gaps, the gaps are real. Iran is now equipping roughly half of every ballistic missile salvo aimed at Israel with cluster warheads, and the results are devastating. 2 construction workers killed in Yehud outside Tel Aviv. Outdoors on a job site, not in a shelter. A couple in their 70s killed in Ramat Gan, just outside their safe room. A 30-year-old foreign worker killed at Moshav Adanim by cluster shrapnel on March 19th. 3 Palestinian women killed in the West Bank by Iranian missiles. The first fatalities in that territory since the war started. By Thursday, mainstream wires reported at least 15 people killed in Israel, with additional deaths separately reported in the West Bank. For injuries, use an attributed ministry figure, or leave totals out. The defense is not airtight. That phrase keeps proving itself. Stay with me, because what the IRGC did simultaneously on the northern border with Hezbollah, coordination is what turns this from a missile story into a strategic crisis. Hezbollah is not freelancing. The IRGC confirmed on March 11th that Wave 40 of Operation True Promise 4 was, in their words, a joint operation between the Revolutionary Guards and the Lebanese resistance. That was the first public acknowledgement of real-time operational sync with Hezbollah during this war. The pattern on March 18th and 19th proved it. While Iranian ballistic missiles hit central and southern Israel, Hezbollah launched coordinated salvos into Haifa, Nahariya, and across the Galilee, 100 rockets per day on average, often timed with Iranian launches. The goal is not symbolic, it is architectural. Saturate every layer of Israeli air defense from all compass points. Force the system to choose what it stops and what it lets through. ACL analysis estimates Hezbollah still holds 25,000 missiles, 10,000 drones, thousands of elite Rad-1 fighters. Since March 3rd, the group has claimed more than 280 attack waves. Israel has responded with over 250 strikes across Lebanon. Ground forces are pushing deeper south of the Litani River. Over 1 million Lebanese displaced are nearly 20% of the population. More than 968 killed, including 100-plus children. Major General Rafi Milo, head of Israel's Northern Command, called Hezbollah's re-entry a serious mistake, but followed it with a warning. The strikes continue. Intensity will rise. That is not the language of someone expecting a quick resolution. Toward the end, I will show why the energy dimension of this war should alarm you more than any missile count. On March 18th, Israel struck Iran's South Pars gas field, the largest natural gas reserve on the planet, shared between Iran and Qatar in the Persian Gulf. Iran's President Pezeshkian warned of uncontrollable consequences that could engulf the entire world. That is not a warning to ignore. Within hours, the IRGC retaliated against energy targets across the Gulf under Wave 63. Qatar's Ras Laffan industrial city, the largest LNG facility on Earth, producing roughly 20% of global liquefied natural gas, took direct missile hits. Qatar Energy reported fires and extensive structural damage. Production at Ras Laffan had already been suspended since March 2nd, after earlier drone strikes. This new attack caused structural damage that energy analysts at Wood Mackenzie say could delay restart by more than 2 months. Saudi Arabia's Samri refinery in Yanbu was hit. That matters because the Saudis had been rerouting oil exports west through the Red Sea to bypass the closed Strait of Hormuz. Iran struck that alternative route. 2 Kuwaiti oil refineries were set ablaze. The UAE's Hobson gas facility and Bob Field in Abu Dhabi were forced to shut down. Qatar expelled Iran's military attachés, giving them 24 hours to leave. Saudi Arabia's top diplomat stated that what little trust existed is now completely shattered. Brent briefly surged toward $118 a barrel, trading around $113 on Thursday. European gas prices jumped 25% on the day, more than 60% above pre-war levels. The IRGC issued a direct warning after the Gulf strikes. If repeated, Attacks on your energy infrastructure and that of your allies will continue until total destruction. That is not rhetoric. That is an operational declaration. Trump responded by threatening to massively destroy South Pars if Iran continues targeting Gulf energy. 3 Israeli officials told Reuters the South Pars strike was coordinated with Washington, despite Trump publicly claiming the U.S. knew nothing. Both statements cannot be true. That contradiction shows how fractured information has become around this war. Now, zoom out. The Pentagon has requested more than $200 billion in war funding from Congress. The Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed. 20% of global oil and 20% of global LNG exports pass through it. 13 U.S. service members have been killed across the region. The U.S. has struck over 7,000 targets inside Iran. Iran reports more than 1,244 dead, including 450 women and children. And the IRGC made one more statement worth noting. They said, life in shelters has become the current state. Since the start of Wave 63, more than 5 million Israelis have been confined to shelters for extended periods. Israel's health ministry warned citizens to rush to shelters with caution, as people injure themselves in the scramble. Schools are closed. Parliament is barely functioning. The Israeli ombudsman called the lack of shelters in northern Israel an urgent danger requiring immediate action. Yet public support for the war remains high. Israelis feel they are fighting for their very existence, even from inside reinforced rooms. That psychological gap between disruption and resolve is one of the most critical dynamics in this war. It determines how long a democracy can sustain a campaign while its population lives underground. Most outsiders see a missile exchange. In reality, what unfolded on March 18, 19 is different. This was the moment the conflict stopped being purely military and became an energy war with global economic consequences that no one controls. All Iran's launchers are supposedly 70% destroyed. Its air defenses are reportedly 85% neutralized. Yet it executed a synchronized 80-target barrage across Israel, while Gulf energy infrastructure burned from Qatar to Kuwait to Abu Dhabi to Saudi Arabia. Either the IDF's damage assessments are overstated, or Iran held reserves in dispersed locations that survived the campaign. Both carry serious consequences. Oil above 113, natural gas up 50%. The Strait of Hormuz closed, 20% of the world's LNG supply offline. $200 billion requested from Congress. No ceasefire framework from any party. The only question that matters now, what does winning look like when the global economy is absorbing the damage? The silence from every capital involved should alarm anyone paying attention. Share this with anyone tracking the conflict. 80 targets hit across Israel, 9 Khorramshahr multi-warhead missiles. Gulf energy infrastructure burning from Qatar to Saudi Arabia to Kuwait. Hezbollah firing 100 rockets a day in lockstep with Iranian salvos. Brent crude above $113. European gas up 50%. Over 5 million Israelis in shelters. Over 1 million Lebanese displaced. And not one government has defined what an acceptable end looks like. Thanks for watching. I appreciate your support. Join the discussion in the comments. Who do you think is winning? Do you think this war is getting out of hand? Please subscribe and like to stay updated. Click the video on the screen to watch another. I'll see you soon.